The year was 2461. For the first time in history, Earth had been invited to the Galactic Council's homeworld. It was supposed to be a moment of peace, the day humanity would join the other great civilizations of the galaxy. People on Earth watched live broadcasts, cheering as the Peace Fleet left orbit. 12 ships, shining in silver and white, carried Earth's leaders, scientists, and ambassadors. They carried hope. But in deep space, hope can be fragile. The fleet moved past the dark side of a dead moon, heading toward the Council's system. The journey was calm, no threats, no alarms. The humans on board spoke of trade, new technology, and the end of war. Captain Elias Ward, commander of the flagship Unity, looked at the stars and allowed himself to believe that the galaxy could be a friend. He was wrong. Without warning, every human ship's radar lit up. Dozens, no hundreds of red contacts appeared around them. Alien battleships, fast, armored, and ready to fire, surrounded the fleet in perfect silence. The human crews tried to hail them. No answer. The alien ships drifted closer, weapons glowing. Then the Peace Fleet's screens went black. The humans could still see each other through the windows, still see the alien ships outside, but all communications and sensors were dead. Panic spread. In the control rooms, Captain Ward shouted for engineers to reboot systems, but nothing worked. The aliens had used a signal, some kind of data weapon, to blind them completely. The first shot came from a massive alien dreadnought, its cannon, glowing blue. A spear of energy slammed into the Unity, tearing its side open. Atmosphere rushed out. Fire filled the corridors. On the other ships, alarms screamed, but still no one could fight back. The Peace Fleet was unarmed. By council order, they had brought no weapons to show trust. One by one, the human ships died. The Solace split apart in a burning arc. The horizon spun helplessly into the dark before exploding. Men and women screamed over emergency channels that no longer reached anyone. Within minutes, all 12 ships were gone. The galaxy saw it happen. The broadcast from Earth had been hijacked. Millions of humans back home watched in horror as the signal showed alien warships destroying their people. Then, the image changed. An alien voice spoke in a cold, perfect translation. Earth has committed crimes against the galaxy. This punishment is justice. No trial, no evidence, just death. On Earth, silence fell over cities. In space stations, soldiers clenched their fists in helpless rage. Children cried in classrooms, and far away in the council chambers, alien leaders congratulated each other. They thought humanity would be broken, but they did not understand Earth. In secret underground bunkers and hidden shipyards, a different voice spoke. Admiral Kane, head of Earth's Defense Command, stood in the shadows of a steel war room, watching the last frames of the massacre. His eyes were cold. His voice was calm. "They think we are finished," he said. "They have no idea what we have been building." Behind him, screens lit up with images the public had never seen. Massive warships under construction, hidden in the storms of Neptune, deep in the asteroid mines of the Belt, buried under the ice of Europa. Ships the size of cities. Ships with weapons that could tear apart a planet. These were not peace vessels. They were the war fleet. The betrayal changed everything. Earth's leaders closed its borders to alien trade. Every ship in space was recalled. Factories ran without rest, pouring steel, reactors, and weapon cores into the hidden fleet. For the first time in history, Earth's nations stood as one. Old enemies shook hands. Scientists who once worked for peace now designed weapons that had no equal. Every worker, every engineer, every soldier understood. This was not defense. This was revenge. Months passed in silence. The Council sent messages demanding Earth's surrender. None were answered. Alien spies searched for signs of a human fleet but found nothing. only strange, coded signals from the outer system and the occasional disappearance of a small alien patrol near Neptune. Rumors spread in the galaxy. Some said Earth had no fleet left at all. Others whispered about a single human ship that could destroy entire squadrons without being seen. But no proof came. In the streets of alien cities, news feeds showed propaganda. They called humans dangerous animals who had been put down for the safety of all. They laughed at the idea that Earth could ever fight back. In the dark, Earth's war rooms prepared. Admiral Kane looked at the final blueprint of the war fleet's flagship. A dreadnought so large it could carry smaller battleships inside. Its armor was made of black neutron-forged alloy, its main cannon a railgun that could fire projectiles at near-light speed. It was not made to patrol, it was made to kill. One night, as the storm winds of Neptune howled around the hidden shipyards, the first of the war fleet's engines roared to life. The sound could not be heard in space, but those who stood in the control rooms felt it, a deep vibration through the floor, a heartbeat of war. Admiral Kane gave the order in a single word: prepare. Across the solar system, lights came, on in hidden bases. Docking clamps unlocked. Ships rose slowly from ice and rock, their black hulls vanishing against the stars. Crews boarded in silence, their faces set with cold determination. The galaxy had betrayed Earth. Now it would learn what humanity truly was. Somewhere beyond the Kuiper Belt, far from any official maps, a single human scout ship waited in the dark. Its captain, Lieutenant Mara Voss, listened to static over her comms. Then, through the noise, a voice came, deep, calm, and deadly. "The war fleet is awake. First target will be chosen soon. No mercy." She smiled without humor. "Understood." The scout ship turned toward alien space, its engines lighting. For the first time in months. Far away, in the shining halls of the Galactic Council, no one yet knew that their time was already running out. Weeks after the massacre of the Peace Fleet, the galaxy began to settle into a dangerous calm. Alien news channels reported that humanity had gone silent, that Earth was isolated and too afraid to act. In the council chambers, alien leaders celebrated. What they believed was the final end of human ambition. They called it the cleansing. But in the far reaches of the solar system, something was moving. In the frozen orbits beyond Neptune, vast shadows drifted between chunks of ice and rock. At first, they looked like asteroids, dark and lifeless. But when the light of a distant sun caught their surface, their shapes became clear. Warships, black as the void, waiting for orders. The war fleet was not only real, it was almost ready. The first to see it were not human eyes. A Zorath mining station, positioned near the edge of its empire, picked up strange readings from the outer system. Their sensors caught the faint outline of something massive, far larger than any known freighter or battleship. At first, they thought it was a drifting planetoid, but the object changed course, moving with precision. The station's commander, a cautious old alien named Jarek, ordered the crew to track it. They never got the chance. The shadow accelerated, and then it was gone. A few hours later, the station's alarms screamed as something vast appeared just outside their sensor range. There was no warning shot, no message, no attempt at contact. A single flash of light filled the viewing deck, and then the station was gone. Nothing remained. No wreckage, no escape pods. To the Zorath Empire, it was as if the mining station had never existed. Only a handful of workers survived, having been away on a nearby freighter. They swore to anyone who would listen that they had seen a human ship, black as night, with no lights and no markings, moving silently before vanishing. The council dismissed their words as lies meant to cause panic, but fear had already begun to spread. In hidden chambers deep under Earth's surface, Admiral Kane studied reports from human intelligence operatives. Alien patrols were being moved closer to the inner council worlds. Trade routes were shifting to avoid certain areas of space. The council was nervous, which meant the war fleet's presence was already being felt. "Good," Kane said simply. "Let them wonder." The war fleet was not just a collection of ships. It was a weapon of terror designed to make the enemy doubt their own safety. Its cloaking systems absorbed scans. Its hulls bent light, making the ships nearly invisible unless they fired. Every vessel carried weapons designed for quick, brutal strikes, railguns that could punch through a cruiser's heart in one shot, plasma lances that could melt hull plating in seconds, and torpedoes that carried their own AI, hunting targets even through asteroid fields. But the most dangerous weapon of all was the fleet's commander, Admiral Kane himself, a man who had vowed never to stop until the galaxy understood what betrayal cost. The first mission was already in motion. A small alien convoy carrying supplies to a council outpost passed through a narrow region of space known as the Veil Corridor. It was a quiet trade route with no history of battles. The convoy's captain had heard the rumors of human ships, but dismissed them as fear stories for children. He was wrong. Without warning, the lead freighter exploded, torn apart by an impact. So fast the scanners could not track it. The second ship began transmitting distress calls, but its signal was cut off mid-sentence. The remaining escorts opened fire blindly into the dark, their weapons flashing against empty space. Then, shapes began to appear, vast black silhouettes, their edges shimmering like heat haze. The aliens realized too late that they had been surrounded from the start. In less than 2 minutes, every ship in the convoy was destroyed. No survivors. The human fleet left no trace except a single floating beacon broadcasting a short message in every known language. "We are awake. We remember." The council received the beacon's signal within hours. Panic swept through their lower ranks. Fleet commanders demanded more ships for escort duty. Traders refused to travel certain routes, and the council's military advisors began arguing over how to respond. Some wanted to launch a preemptive strike against Earth. Others warned that doing so might provoke a war the galaxy was not prepared for. But none of them knew the truth. The war had already begun. On Earth, factories worked day and night, feeding the war fleet with new ships and weapons. Entire cities on Mars were repurposed into shipyards. AI-controlled drones mined the asteroid belt for metals, and every human resource was bent toward one purpose: destruction. Admiral Kane gave strict orders. The war fleet was to attack only when the target was vulnerable, and to vanish before enemy reinforcements could arrive. Every strike was meant to deepen the galaxy's fear and confusion. Over the next month, 3 more alien outposts vanished without warning. An escort destroyer was found drifting empty, its crew missing, its black box recording only static and faint human whispers. Merchants began telling stories of phantom ships that could appear inside a formation, destroy a target, and vanish before sensors could lock on. The Council's official position remained firm. Humanity was finished. But in private, their highest members began to worry. One night, in the grand chamber of the Council's security meeting, an argument broke out. An insectoid admiral slammed his claws on the table, demanding a direct attack on the solar system. A reptilian diplomat warned that if the humans truly had such ships, then attacking them head-on would be suicide. They debated until dawn, but no decision was made. Meanwhile, in the silent dark beyond Pluto, Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the war fleet's flagship, Oblivion. Around him, the black shapes of his dreadnoughts drifted like hunting beasts. His officers reported that the next target was ready, a shipyard deep within Council space, lightly defended and critical to their warship production. Kane gave the order in his calm, cold voice. "Move in! No survivors! Leave nothing they can rebuild!" Engines flared briefly before fading again into darkness. The fleet slipped away without a sound, leaving only the empty void where they had waited. The galaxy still thought Earth was hiding. Soon, they would learn it was hunting. The Veil corridor attacks had sent whispers through the galaxy, but the first true strike was still to come, and when it did, it would shake every world under the Council's banner. The target was chosen with care, a major convoy carrying war supplies to the frontiers, guarded by some of the Council's most advanced warships. It was meant to be untouchable, the kind of force that could crush any pirate fleet in minutes. But against the war fleet, they would last less than the time it takes to draw breath. The convoy moved through deep space, its massive carriers flanked by destroyers and cruisers, their silver hulls shining in the light of a distant star. Inside the flagship Valor's Pride, the alien admiral reviewed the route, confident that no human ship could ever get close. His scouts had swept the sector twice, his sensors scanned for cloaked vessels every minute, and every ship's guns were primed. He believed the rumors of the war fleet were nothing but human desperation made into ghost stories. But the humans were already there. Black shapes drifted in the darkness ahead, silent as shadows. The Oblivion led the strike, her hull invisible, against the star field until the moment Kane gave the order. Fire! The space between the fleets lit up in a single blinding flash as the first railgun rounds crossed the void at near light speed. The lead destroyer's shields collapsed instantly, the next shot cutting it in half before its crew could even shout an alarm. The alien formation staggered in confusion, trying to track the invisible attackers. But by the time they fired, the war fleet was already moving, shifting positions like predators in a storm. Plasma lances slashed across the convoy, melting armor and cutting through bridges. One of the carriers tried to break away, its engines burning bright. But a swarm of AI-guided torpedoes chased it down, each one adjusting course until they struck in perfect sequence, tearing the massive ship apart from the inside. The aliens fought back with everything they had. Flak shells filled the dark with glowing shards, beam cannons cut through empty space, and missiles screamed toward phantom targets. But for every shot they fired, nothing was there. The war fleet's cloaking systems made them ghosts, and even when sensors caught a glimpse, it was already too late. Kane's voice was calm as he issued orders, each one like a knife stroke. Target their engines, destroy their command ships, leave the rest adrift. Within minutes, the convoy was broken. Ships burned, drifting helplessly in the void, their crews either dead or abandoning ship in escape pods that would never be found. The Valor's Pride was the last to fall. The alien admiral refused to retreat, shouting orders to keep fighting. But a single railgun shot from the Oblivion pierced the flagship from bow to stern, and in a flash of light, it was gone. Silence filled the sector. No survivors would return to tell the Council what had happened. Only one thing was left behind: a single black beacon floating where the battle had begun. It pulsed slowly, broadcasting the same message as before, but now with a new line added: "We are awake, we remember, and now we begin." When the Council received the signal, there was chaos. The loss of the convoy meant critical supplies were gone, weapons and fuel that would take months to replace. Some leaders screamed for an immediate invasion of Earth. Others demanded tighter protection for their own worlds, fearing they would be next. Trade routes began to close. Fleets were recalled from distant borders, and the great alliances between alien empires started to fracture under the weight of fear. Kane watched all of it unfold from the command deck of the Oblivion. Reports from human intelligence confirmed that the Council was pulling ships back toward their core worlds, leaving outer systems more vulnerable than ever. It was exactly what he wanted. The Warfleet's next phase was already in motion, not just to destroy ships, but to dismantle the Council's power piece by piece. As the Oblivion and her sister ships vanished back into the black, the wreckage of the first strike drifted silently, a graveyard in space that would serve as a warning. And yet, Kane knew it would not be enough. The galaxy still did not understand the depth of humanity's rage. They still thought this was a war they could win. Soon they would learn that the war fleet was not here to win a war. It was here to end it. The first strike had been more than a battle. It had been a message written in fire across the stars, and that message spread faster than any ship could travel. Entire systems whispered of black ships that could appear without warning and erase. Fleets in minutes. Merchants began refusing to carry cargo to Council worlds. Smugglers abandoned profitable routes if they passed too close to human-controlled space. And even military convoys started traveling with twice the usual escorts. But none of it stopped the disappearances. One by one, outposts went dark. Patrol fleets failed to report back. Colonies that had stood for centuries suddenly stopped sending transmissions. The official statements from the Council blamed pirates or natural disasters. But no one believed it anymore. The rumors were too consistent, the pattern too clear. Wherever the war fleet went, nothing survived. In the grand halls of the Council chambers, fear began to show in the faces of its members. Some demanded peace talks, but every message sent toward Earth received the same reply from an untraceable signal: no mercy. The alien leaders were used to controlling fear, using propaganda to bend their people's thoughts. But this was different. This fear was not born from speeches or threats. It came from the simple fact that no one knew where the humans would strike next. Whole cities on alien worlds began holding night watches, scanning the skies for signs of black holes blocking the stars. Children were told not to look at the night sky, as if hiding from it could stop death from coming. On distant mining colonies, workers would stop their drills and stand in silence if the comms picked up even the smallest burst of static, afraid it meant the humans were near. Admiral Kane understood this fear better than anyone. He did not need to destroy every world. He needed the galaxy to destroy itself. On the bridge of the Oblivion, Kane studied maps of Council-controlled space. Every strike so far had been carefully chosen, systems on the edges of the map, targets that were far enough apart to keep the enemy guessing, but close enough to cause panic in the trade networks. Now the next phase would begin, hitting worlds that were deep inside supposedly safe territory. The psychological effect would be devastating, and so it began. On the prosperous world of Kareth Prime, the capital city was alive with celebration. Its leaders trying to convince the population that the war fleet was a myth. But as the twin suns set, the sky above the city darkened far too quickly. Massive shadows passed over the towers, and then the air itself seemed to shudder. The first blast came from orbit, a precision strike that turned the planet's military command center into molten glass. Seconds later, orbital defenses were ripped apart by railgun fire. People screamed in the streets, watching as black ships the size of mountains descended through the clouds, weapons glowing like the eyes of predators. In less than 10 minutes, the city was gone. The war fleet already rising back into the void before reinforcements could even leave their docks. The attack was so sudden and so clean that it left the Council's military leaders stunned. If the humans could strike Kareth Prime, they could strike anywhere. Panic spread faster than reason. Systems began pulling their fleets back to guard their own worlds, weakening the Council's outer defenses even further. Some worlds started refusing Council orders altogether, declaring neutrality in hopes of avoiding human wrath. But Kane had no interest in peace with the weak. Every declaration of neutrality was met with silence from Earth, but those same worlds would later find themselves staring into the shadows of human dreadnoughts. The war fleet never responded to pleas, never sent demands, never gave warnings. It simply arrived, destroyed, and left. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy's balance began to break. Trade routes collapsed entirely in some regions, leading to shortages of food, fuel, and medicine. Riots broke out on multiple Council worlds. Military officers deserted their posts, unwilling to face a fleet they could not see. The Council tried to rally its remaining strength, ordering massive military exercises in the heart of its territory, but even there, unease grew. Every time a training drill began, soldiers would glance upward, half expecting black ships to blot out the stars. Alien spies who tried to infiltrate Earth returned with nothing, if they returned at all. Most vanished, their last transmissions filled with static and strange whispers. In hidden bases, human scientists continued to improve the war fleet's technology. Cloaking fields became stronger, weapons became faster, and engines were tuned for even greater bursts of acceleration. Kane pushed his crews harder than ever, reminding them of the Peace Fleet, of the betrayal, of the execution broadcasts that had shown human faces dying in alien fire. "Never forget," he told them, "and never forgive." The fear in the galaxy was working exactly as he planned. The Council was no longer a united front. It was a cluster of frightened empires, each one wondering if their neighbor would sell them out to survive. And through it all, the humans kept striking. Every attack was a ghost's touch, sudden, unstoppable, and gone before the enemy could even breathe. In the dark war rooms of alien admirals, a single truth began to settle in. The war fleet could not be defeated in open battle because it would never allow such a battle to happen. They were hunters, not soldiers, and every alien ship in space was their prey. Kane knew the time was coming when the war fleet would stop striking from the shadows and show itself in full, but not yet. First, the galaxy needed to collapse into chaos. Only then would the final blow be delivered, and only then would the betrayal of Earth be repaid in full. Until that day, the black ships would keep moving, silent and unseen, carrying the promise they had made to themselves the day the Peace Fleet died: no mercy. The Council had finally reached its breaking point. Weeks of silence and sudden destruction had left their fleets fractured, their people in panic, and their trade networks collapsing. Every attempt to predict the war fleet's movements had failed. Every ambush they tried had turned up nothing but empty space. But now, for the first time since the betrayal, they believed they had found Earth's secret base. Intelligence reports from 3 separate alien spy networks claimed that a massive human fleet was hiding near the debris fields of the Orvis Rift, a desolate region where asteroid storms and electromagnetic interference made long-range scans almost useless. The Council seized on the opportunity. This was their chance to end the human threat before it could spread further. They gathered the largest fleet assembled since the war began. More than 400 warships, including dreadnoughts, carriers, and the newest line of Hunter-class cruisers designed to track cloaked targets. The operation was codenamed Final Light, and the plan was simple: surround the Orvis Rift from all sides, move in quickly, and crush the humans before they could escape. The alien admirals were confident. They believed the humans had been relying on surprise and speed, and that against a force this large, even the war fleet would be cornered. But Admiral Kane had been expecting this. From the moment the first leaked intelligence reached the Council's spies, it had all been part of his plan. The humans had planted the information themselves, letting the aliens think they had discovered something important. The location they were rushing toward was not a base. It was a killing ground. Inside the rift, the electromagnetic storms were powerful enough to scramble most targeting systems, but the war fleet's new weapons had been designed to cut through interference without losing accuracy. Even better, Kane had positioned mines, stealth drones, and automated weapon platforms hidden among the asteroids weeks before. By the time the Council fleet entered, every ship would already be in the crosshairs. The alien armada approached cautiously at first, their scanners straining against the static of the rift. They saw nothing. The admirals reassured themselves that the humans were hiding deep within the field and began ordering their ships forward. That was when the trap closed. The first explosions tore through the front ranks of the fleet as concealed mines detonated in precise patterns, ripping open hulls and igniting fuel stores. Confusion spread instantly. The alien ships tried to pull back, but the moment they slowed, the black shapes of the war fleet emerged from the asteroid shadows. Railgun fire lit the rift like lightning, plasma beams slicing through cruiser after cruiser. The Council fleet fired wildly into the dark, their shots missing or glancing harmlessly off the asteroids. Kane's voice echoed calmly over the war fleet's comms. "Cut their command first. Leave the rest blind." One by one, the alien flagships were destroyed, their orders dying with them. Without coordination, the Council ships scattered, trying to flee in every direction. But every path had already been blocked. The stealth drones activated, releasing storms of micro-torpedoes that hunted targets through the debris. Carriers erupted into fireballs, destroyers broke apart in silent bursts of light, and the few ships that managed to turn their guns on the humans found themselves facing cloaked dreadnoughts that seemed to appear out of nowhere. In less than 20 minutes, the 400-ship armada was reduced to wreckage. The survivors drifted powerless, their comms filled with desperate calls for help that would never be answered. Kane ordered no rescue attempts for the enemy crews. Instead, he had the Oblivion broadcast a single message to the galaxy, intercepted by every listening post in Council space. "This is what awaits all who follow the Council. We are not hiding. We are waiting." The psychological blow was devastating. The Council had promised its people a decisive victory. Instead, they had suffered the most humiliating defeat in their history. Entire sectors began questioning their loyalty, and some openly refused to send more ships to the war effort. Military deserters became common, and whispers spread that the war fleet could not be defeated at all. Meanwhile, Kane reviewed the battle reports in silence. The trap had worked perfectly, but it was only one step in the larger plan. Every victory, every strike, every destroyed fleet was pushing the galaxy closer to collapse. The goal was not just to win, it was to make. The Council so weak and divided that when the final strike came, no one would be left to stop it. In the war rooms of Earth, new targets were already being chosen. The Orvis Rift victory would embolden the war fleet, but it would also serve as bait for the next stage. Kane knew the Council would respond to this disaster with desperation, and desperate enemies made mistakes. As the Oblivion and the rest of the fleet vanished once again into the black void, the asteroid field was left littered with the remains of hundreds of alien ships, silent monuments to the trap they had walked into. And somewhere in the cold emptiness of space, the hunters were already moving toward their next kill. The Orvis Rift massacre had left the Council stunned, but Admiral Kane was not finished. Destroying ships and outposts spread fear, but fear faded with time. He needed something deeper, something that would live in the minds of the Council's leaders every time they closed their eyes. And so Kane gave an order that shocked even some of his own officers. Capture, not kill. The next operation was precise and brutal. A Council war convoy carrying a high-ranking fleet commander was ambushed in the darkness between systems. The war fleet disabled the escorts in seconds, targeting engines and power cores without destroying the ships. Then boarding craft swept in, black-armored human soldiers flooding the corridors like shadows given life. The convoy's crews fought hard, but against the war fleet's boarding teams they never had a chance. Within minutes, the fleet commander, General Threx of the I. Voreth species, was dragged from his command chair, his clawed hands bound, his eyes burning with hatred. Kane had him taken aboard the Oblivion and locked in a windowless chamber deep in the ship's core. Hours later, the general woke in silence. There were no guards in sight, only darkness and a single beam of light shining down from above. A table stood in the center, and on it sat a small device. As Threx sat up, the device activated, projecting images into the air. Images of Earth's cities burning under alien fire, of human diplomats executed by Council order, of the peace, fleet's final moments as alien weapons tore through unarmed ships. Threx tried to look away, but the images followed him, each one sharper, each scream clearer. Then Kane stepped into the light. His voice was low and calm, carrying the weight of steel. "You were there," Kane said, not as a question, but as a fact. "You gave orders that day. You called it justice." Threx snarled, speaking in his own language, but Kane cut him off with a single phrase, perfectly translated. "This is why we will not stop." He stepped closer until his shadow fell across the alien's face. "You will live, Threx. You will return to your council, and you will tell them exactly what you have seen here. Tell them Earth remembers. Tell them the war fleet is coming. Tell them there will be no mercy." With that, Kane turned away. Hours later, Threx was placed on a small shuttle and released into neutral space, his ship's comms already broadcasting a distress signal. When he was recovered by a council patrol, his story spread like wildfire. He spoke of the humans' dark fleet, of their cold precision, of Kane's promise. The council tried to suppress the story, but it was too late. It passed from soldier to soldier, from world to world, until it reached even the most distant colonies. Some dismissed it as propaganda, but others saw the truth in Threx's eyes. He had looked into the darkness and survived, and the darkness had let him go only so he could spread its shadow. The effect was immediate. Morale in the council's fleets plummeted. Officers began refusing long-range assignments. Merchants stopped traveling anywhere near human-controlled sectors. And the war fleet's attacks continued, each one adding weight to Threx's warning. Meanwhile, on the Oblivion, Kane watched the chaos unfold. He had not sent Threx back out of mercy. He had sent him as a weapon, a living reminder of the war fleet's reach. In war, Kane knew, killing an enemy made them a martyr, but letting them live to spread fear could break an empire, and the cracks were already showing. Several smaller member states began withdrawing from the Council's military alliance, claiming they could not spare ships for a war that was already lost. Others began sending secret offers to Earth, offering resources in exchange for being spared from the war fleet's wrath. Kane accepted nothing. The war was not over, and there would be no deals until the Council itself lay in ruins. Back on Earth, the story of General Threx was broadcast in secret to every human settlement. Families watched the alien's trembling voice describe Kane's message, and in it they found strength. The war fleet was not just fighting, it was winning. And when the time came, they would see the end of those who had betrayed them. In the dark heart of space, the Oblivion changed course. The next target had been chosen, a world deep within. The Council's core systems, far from the borders, a place that believed itself untouchable. Kane intended to show them that nowhere in the galaxy was safe. The trap at Orvis Rift had shattered their fleets. Threx's release had shattered their courage. Now Kane would shatter their home. The alien capital of Zerath Prime had never seen war in 1,000 years. It was the jewel of the Council's core worlds, a vast city world wrapped in glowing orbital rings and shimmering defense grids. Its surface was covered with silver towers, green sky gardens, and oceans so clear they reflected the stars like mirrors. Billions lived there, confident in the belief that no enemy could ever reach them. Their fleets were vast, their planetary shields said to be unbreakable. Yet on this day, in the cold silence of space, Admiral Kane's war fleet emerged from the void. The Oblivion led the formation, its black hull swallowing the starlight, followed by the human dreadnoughts, Vanguard, Eclipse, and Harbinger. Smaller, strike cruisers formed a deadly spearhead around them, engines burning with quiet power. The appearance of the fleet was like a shadow falling over the world. Council defense networks screamed warnings, orbital stations powered their weapons, and fleets scrambled from the nearby sectors. But Kane had planned this strike to the second. Before the first alien ships could form proper formations, the war fleet unleashed its opening blow. From the Oblivion's forward batteries, a wave of dark energy projectiles tore through space, smashing into the nearest orbital station and reducing it to molten fragments in seconds. The other human warships followed, their heavy cannons and missile pods vomiting fire across the skies. Within minutes, the first defensive ring around Zerath Prime was gone. Kane's voice was steady as he gave orders. "Target their shield generators. Do not stop until their skies are open." Strike cruisers darted forward, weaving between alien defense fire, striking with surgical precision. Each time, an alien. Destroyer moved to intercept. A human ship appeared in its blind spot and cut it apart with railgun fire. The aliens fought back fiercely, their heavy cruisers spitting plasma bolts and beam lances, but Kane's fleet moved like a predator pack, coordinated and merciless. The second defense ring collapsed in less than 20 minutes. On the surface of Zerath Prime, panic spread like wildfire. Civilians crowded into bunkers, leaders screamed orders through secure channels, and planetary broadcast stations urged calm, even as the skies above turned red with fire. Kane watched the massive shield dome shimmer as the planetary generators pushed to their limits. He knew they could hold for hours against a normal assault. But this was not a normal assault. "Bring the lance online," Kane ordered. Deep inside the Oblivion, the superweapon awoke. The Rift Lance was a weapon born from the ashes of Earth's betrayal, reverse-engineered alien technology fused with human engineering, capable of focusing raw dark matter energy into a single beam strong enough to tear space itself. When it fired, the stars seemed to bend. The beam struck the shield dome like a sword through glass. The first impact shattered its outer layers, sending shockwaves across the planet's atmosphere. The second shot punched straight through, and suddenly, Zerath Prime's skies were open to the Warfleet's wrath. Kane gave the order without hesitation. "Burn it!" The human warships descended into low orbit, unleashing a storm of precision strikes. Military command centers vanished in blossoms of fire. Spaceports exploded in cascading chains as fuel. Depots ignited. Power grids failed, plunging entire continents into darkness. And then came the message, transmitted to every channel, every comm frequency across the planet. It was Admiral Kane's voice, calm and cold. "This is the price of betrayal. You took Earth's peace and turned it into ashes. Now we return the favor. Remember this day, because it will not be your last. Not yet. We will come again, and each time, we will take more." On the ground, alien leaders begged for mercy, offering to surrender their fleets. Kane ignored them. This was not the day for negotiations. The bombardment continued until the Council fleet reinforcements finally appeared on the horizon, a massive force of battleships, carriers, and frigates, outnumbering the war fleet nearly 2-1. Any other commander might have retreated. Kane did not. Instead, he ordered his ships to form a spear formation and strike straight at the heart of the incoming armada. Human dreadnoughts clashed with alien battleships in brutal exchanges, shields flaring, hulls cracking. Kane's voice cut through the chaos. "Hold the line! Break them before we leave!" For 47 minutes, the battle raged. In the end, half of the Council reinforcements lay in ruins, drifting as burning hulks. The rest fled rather than face more losses. Only then did Kane give the order to withdraw. The war fleet vanished back into the darkness, leaving Zerath Prime, burning in their wake. From orbit, the once pristine capital was now a patchwork of smoke and flame, its towers shattered, its oceans choked with debris. Billions had seen humanity's power firsthand, and the message was clear. Nowhere was safe. That night, across the galaxy, whispers spread. The Council's greatest fortress world had been struck, its fleets humbled, its shield shattered, in a single day. And with every whisper came the same fear. If Kane could reach Zerath Prime, he could reach anywhere. The Council chambers on Carthion Prime were silent, the air heavy with fear. The great hall, once filled with arrogant voices and laughter, now echoed with whispered arguments and panicked debates. Holographic displays showed the destruction of Zerath Prime in grim detail, the shattered defense rings, the burning continents, the ruins of their proud capital. Every delegate knew the truth now. Humanity's war fleet was not just powerful, it was unstoppable. Kane's strike had proven that no fleet, no fortress, and no shield could protect them. Some called for peace, others for vengeance, but all knew that whatever choice they made, the galaxy had changed forever. High Chancellor Valor, once one of the loudest voices pushing for Earth's downfall, now looked like a man aged 100 years in a single day. His speech faltered as he tried to rally the council, but every pair of alien eyes in the chamber saw the same thing: weakness. Far away, hidden in the cold reaches of space, Kane watched the council session through intercepted communications. His intelligence teams had infiltrated the council's networks long before the attack, planting listening devices, hacking into private channels, and bribing low-level functionaries. Now he was using the chaos to strike in a new way, not with guns, but with fear. Aboard the Oblivion, Kane met with his inner circle. Captain Sora relayed the latest intel reports. "They're fracturing, Admiral. Half the member races want to pull their fleets home to defend their own worlds. The other half want to throw everything into one massive counterattack." Kane's cold eyes narrowed. "We'll give them neither peace nor war. We'll give them uncertainty." The plan was simple but ruthless. Strike small, but vital. Targets across council space, each time leaving behind messages that made it seem like no world was beyond humanity's reach. Supply depots would vanish overnight, military shipyards would be found in ruins, and trade convoys would simply disappear into the void. It would make the council paranoid, force them to spread their fleets thin, and weaken their unity from the inside. The first blow came 3 days later when the council's primary communications relay station in the Orthea sector exploded without warning. The blast severed secure communications between 7 major worlds, throwing their defense coordination into chaos. A day later, the largest munitions plant on Dalvra Prime erupted into a firestorm, its surface glassed by pinpoint orbital strikes. On each world, survivors reported the same thing: dark, silent ships appearing out of nowhere, striking with precision and vanishing before any response could be mounted. Rumors spread faster than official reports. Council citizens whispered of human warships that could turn invisible, of assassins who could kill a leader in his own palace without leaving a trace, of Kane himself appearing on enemy bridges before, destroying them. The council tried to control the narrative, but the damage was done. Fear was spreading faster than their propaganda could contain it. Meanwhile, Kane's operatives began working in the shadows of the council's political halls. Disguised agents infiltrated staff offices, planting forged documents and false intelligence designed to pit member races against each other. One intercepted transmission, fabricated by Kane's team, appeared to show that the Venar race was secretly negotiating a separate peace with humanity. Another forged data package suggested that the Threx Dominion was preparing to abandon the council entirely. Within days, trust inside the council collapsed. Worlds began pulling their ambassadors, fleets retreated from joint patrols, and old rivalries flared once more. Kane knew the council was already starting to rot from within. All he had to do was keep pressing. But his war was not without resistance. In the shadow of the council's decline, a figure emerged: Fleet Marshal Dravik, commander of the largest surviving battle group in the galaxy. Dravik was a veteran of 100 campaigns and had studied every battle report involving the human war fleet. He did not underestimate Kane, and he began to rally the strongest remaining fleets for one purpose: to find and destroy the Oblivion. When Kane received the intelligence report on Dravik, he smiled for the first time in days. "Good," he said. "Let him come." It will save me the trouble of hunting him." But Kane was not reckless. He ordered his fleet to remain hidden in the dark edges of the void belt, a dangerous stretch of space filled with asteroid storms and gravitic anomalies where no normal fleet would dare to travel. There, human engineers worked tirelessly, upgrading weapons, improving armor, and preparing for the inevitable confrontation. Even as Kane prepared for open battle, his shadow war continued. One night, under the twin moons of Carthion Prime, High Chancellor Valor awoke to find a data slate placed on his desk, one that none of his guards had seen delivered. It contained a single message in human standard: "We are closer than you think." The Chancellor's hands shook as he realized the meaning. Humanity could reach him, here, in the heart of the Council, whenever they wished. By the end of the IDA week, 3 more high-ranking Council officials received similar warnings. Some resigned, others fled to unknown locations, and one, a staunch supporter of the war, was found dead in his quarters, his throat cut, the words "for Earth" carved into the wall. The Council called it a tragedy. Kane called it progress. The Shadow War was working, but the game was about to change. On the far side of the galaxy, Dravik's fleets completed their preparations. Hundreds of ships gathered under his banner. Battleships, carriers, gunships, and frigates, all armed to the teeth. It was the largest military force assembled since the war began, and its sole mission was to wipe out the human war fleet once and for all. Dravik sent a message to Kane, broadcast across open space for the galaxy to hear. "Human Admiral, you hide in the dark, striking at the weak. I will drag you into the light and burn your fleet to ash." Kane listened to the transmission in silence, then simply said, "Let him try." The stage was set. The next battle would not be a shadow strike or a surprise raid. It would be the clash that decided the fate of the war, and perhaps the galaxy itself. The galaxy held its breath as Fleet Marshal Dravik's massive armada surged into the void belt. His ships moved in tight formation, their weapons fully charged, shields humming with energy, and fighter wings ready for deployment at a moment's notice. The Council had poured everything it had left into this offensive. Hundreds of ships from dozens of alien worlds now sailed under Dravik's command, each captain aware that this could be their final mission. The orders were clear: locate the human war fleet, destroy the Oblivion, and end Kane's reign of terror. But Kane was not waiting idly. Deep within the shifting labyrinth of the void belt, the Oblivion floated in near silence, surrounded by the rest of the war fleet, hidden among swirling asteroid fields and spatial distortions that could tear a ship apart in seconds. Kane studied the tactical displays, watching as Dravik's fleets pushed deeper into the belt. Every movement was deliberate. He knew Dravik would be expecting ambushes, but he also knew the Marshal's pride would drive him forward. The first stage of Kane's trap was already in motion. Small, cloaked frigates drifted ahead of the enemy fleet, planting remote mines among the asteroid clusters. They were not ordinary explosives. Each one was equipped with gravitic destabilizers capable of tearing holes in space, sending ships tumbling into uncontrolled spirals. Hours later, the first of Dravik's scout ships disappeared into a sudden vortex, its desperate distress signal cut off mid-scream. The Council fleet tightened formation, shields raised, but this only made them slower, easier to predict. Kane's voice was cold and steady as he gave the next order. "Phase 2! Heard them!" The Warfleet's smaller strike craft began to appear on the fringes of the enemy's sensors, firing a few long-range shots before vanishing into the debris fields. It was just enough to draw the massive armada further in, toward the narrow corridors Kane had mapped weeks in advance. Dravik, though cautious, refused to let the bait slip away. "They're running!" he growled to his bridge crew. "We press on. No human escapes." By the time the Council fleet reached the central choke point of the void belt, Kane's trap was ready. The surrounding asteroid clusters had been rigged with seismic charges, and with a single command, Kane detonated them. The explosions didn't destroy the Council ships outright, but they unleashed a storm of debris that crashed into shields, scattered formations, and cut off escape routes. In the chaos, the Oblivion and her warships emerged from hiding like predators from the dark. Plasma lances and railgun slugs ripped through the first wave of Council vessels before they could even turn to fire. Kane's voice was calm as he directed the slaughter. "Target their carriers first, blind them!" One by one, the Council's fighter bays exploded into molten wreckage, their pilots trapped before they could launch. Dravik's tactical officers shouted reports of heavy losses, but the Marshal refused to break. He ordered his core battleships into a tight spearhead formation and charged directly toward the Oblivion. The space between the two flagships became a maelstrom of fire. Beams of energy carved through armor, missiles streaked across the void, and the wreckage of shattered ships drifted lifelessly in the darkness. The Oblivion's shields flared under the relentless assault, but Kane stood unflinching, his eyes fixed on the enemy's flagship. "Bring me Dravik," he said. A wave of human warships surged forward, concentrating all fire on the Marshal's command vessel. The alien flagship was a fortress, triple-layered shields, reinforced armor, and a bridge buried deep within its core. But Kane's fleet fought with precision, hammering the same points over and over until cracks began to appear. Dravik knew his ship was dying, yet his defiance burned hotter than ever. "All ships, focus on the Oblivion. If I fall, let it be in her shadow." The two Titans closed the distance until their hulls nearly scraped. Boarding alarms screamed aboard both vessels. Kane led the assault personally, striding through the smoke-filled corridors of Dravik's flagship with a squad of heavily armed Marines at his back. The fighting was brutal, every step paid for in blood. Kane moved like a force of nature, cutting down any who dared stand in his way. When he reached the blast doors to the bridge, he ordered them breached. Inside, Fleet Marshal Dravik stood waiting, sword in hand. The two men, one human, one alien, faced each other in the dim glow of the failing bridge lights. No words were exchanged. The clash was swift and merciless. Dravik's blade moved with deadly precision, but Kane fought with the cold efficiency of a man who had already decided the outcome. In the end, Dravik fell to his knees, the tip of Kane's blade at his throat. "You fought well," Kane said quietly, then drove the blade home. With their leader dead, the Council fleet broke. Some ships surrendered immediately. Others tried to flee, only to be hunted down by the relentless human warships. Within hours, the Void Belt was littered with burning wreckage, the Council's greatest armada reduced to drifting husks. As the last enemy vessel exploded in the distance, Kane returned to the Oblivion's bridge. His officers awaited his orders, the glow of victory in their eyes. Kane looked out over the field of destruction and gave the only command they needed to hear. "We move on the core worlds." The war was no longer about survival. It was about ending the Council once and for all. And Kane would not stop until every world that had betrayed Earth burned in the shadow of humanity's wrath. The Council's core worlds glittered in the darkness of space like jewels, each one wrapped in layers of orbital defenses, battle stations, and patrol fleets. They had been built to be impenetrable, the heart of a galactic empire that had ruled, for centuries, without fear. But now fear had returned. Kane's war fleet, forged in betrayal and hardened by endless battles, emerged from hyperspace, on the edge of the Council's most sacred territory. The Oblivion led the charge, its black hull reflecting the light of distant suns, its weapons already locked on target. The humans had not come to negotiate. They had come to end it. The first target was Vorth Prime, the political capital of the Council. Kane had studied its defenses for months, memorizing the positions of every orbital gun and fleet formation. He knew they would expect a direct assault, and that was exactly what he gave them. The war fleet surged forward in a wall of firepower, unleashing plasma lances, railgun slugs, and missile swarms that shredded the outer patrol ships before they could even form a counterattack. The defenders fought fiercely, but their weapons could not match the precision and brutality of human engineering. Within minutes, the first line of defense crumbled. Kane's voice echoed through the fleet. No mercy, no retreat. Today we erase the Council from the stars. On the surface of Vorth Prime, panic swept through the streets as alarms blared. The sky burned with streaks of light as orbital platforms exploded one after another. Civilians fled to shelters, but Kane's war was not aimed at the innocent. His orders were clear: destroy the leadership, dismantle the power structure, and leave the Council's empire headless. In orbit, the last of the defensive fleets rallied around the central command station, a massive ring-shaped fortress bristling with weapons. It was the strongest point in the system, and the Council believed it could hold out for days. It lasted less than 2 hours. The Oblivion spearheaded the assault, its main cannon firing a concentrated beam that tore straight through the fortresses, shields, and armor. A chain of secondary explosions ripped through the station's spine until it cracked apart, drifting lifelessly into the void. Kane watched in silence as the wreckage scattered. One world down, many more to go. The war fleet moved with relentless speed, jumping from system to system. Each time they arrived, the outcome was the same. Orbital defenses crushed, fleets annihilated, political leaders executed or captured. The galaxy watched in horror as one by one the pillars of the Council's rule collapsed. Resistance grew, desperate. Some worlds fought to the last ship, others surrendered without firing a shot. It made no difference. Kane's orders remained unchanged. Every planet that had signed the betrayal pact against Earth was to be neutralized. Finally, the fleet reached Doria Prime, the birthplace of the betrayal, the world where the Council had first voted to cut Earth from the galaxy and condemn its people to isolation and death. The planet's surface was a sprawling city that covered almost every inch of land, its atmosphere thick with defense drones and shield generators. As Kane stood on the Oblivion's bridge, staring at the blue-green sphere below, his crew waited for his decision. This was the moment the entire war had been building toward. Kane opened the comms to the planet's leaders, offering them one chance. "This is Fleet Commander Kane of the United Earth War Fleet. You condemned our home. You turned your backs as billions suffered. Now your fate is in my hands. Surrender unconditionally, dismantle your government, and submit to human authority, or you will be erased from history." The Council leaders replied with defiance, their voices trembling but resolute. "We will never kneel to humanity. You will not destroy us." Kane gave a single nod to his weapons officer. "Then, you destroy yourselves." The Oblivion's main batteries roared to life, joined by the firepower of every ship in the fleet. The planetary shields flared under the onslaught, glowing brighter and brighter until they shattered like glass. The bombardment that followed was surgical and merciless. Key command centers, military bases, and government complexes were vaporized. Kane's fleet avoided civilian sectors where possible, but any resistance was met with overwhelming force. Within hours, Doria Prime's defenses lay in ruins. The surviving Council leaders were dragged from their bunkers and brought aboard the Oblivion. Kane faced them in the war room, his expression cold and unreadable. "You had your chance. Now you will watch everything you built fall." Over the next week, Kane's fleet dismantled what was left of the Council's infrastructure. Communications. Arrays were destroyed, military shipyards leveled, and every fleet still loyal to the old order hunted down and annihilated. The galaxy was left in stunned silence. The Council, the same power that had once ruled over hundreds of worlds, was gone. And in its place stood humanity, no longer the underestimated outcast, but the dominant force among the stars. As the last council flag was burned on the surface of Doria Prime, Kane stood on the observation deck of the Oblivion, watching the flames from orbit. His officers gathered behind him, waiting for his words. "This is not the end," he said quietly. "We were betrayed once. Never again. From this day forward, humanity decides its own fate, and any who dare challenge us will remember what we did here." Across the galaxy, those words spread like wildfire. Some worlds cheered, others trembled, but all understood one truth. Humanity had risen from the ashes of betrayal, and its wrath had remade the stars. The war was over. But the legend of Kane and the war fleet had only just begun.